All right, guys. As requested, here is Spacey at night doing NE and NI with spooky nighttime fun. The moon is almost full. I think that's good enough. And I'm wearing my Spacey t-shirt. I'm not even sure if you can see it. I'm sure you've seen me in it before. I love this shirt because it's freaking crazy and has all kinds of trippy colors and artwork on it, which is the kind of thing someone with extroverted intuition might be into. See, the best way to compare NE and NI is just to think of NE as divergent and NI as convergent. Meaning, NE starts from a certain point and then branches out from there. It's always looking for alternative things, different things, new and interesting things. Right? I get bored easily. I want new things. I want to be blasted with colors and, lights and sounds and dreams, and I want more crazy raw data to work with. And that's not to say that NI users are normal or aren't thinking about or doing different or interesting things, because as intuitives, I'm sure you've noticed, they're often not very quote-unquote normal people. But what I mean by NI being convergent is just that they're not always looking for different ways of doing things, right? However, they will often be thinking about interesting different topics, right? They'll spend a lot of time, pondering psychology and typology and, politics and all kinds of different topics, just like an NE user will, like me. We have a lot to talk about. My younger brother's an INFJ. My Uncle Jim's an INFJ. I love talking to them about that stuff. And I, can totally talk to them on an NI level because I have 6-slot NI. Right? NI people are looking at things from a holistic perspective, right? They want everything to fit together into a unified whole. And that's what's convergent about it, right? They take all these disparate, often contradictory things and, mash them together into a singular understanding that actually does make a certain amount of sense, at least to them, right? I was talking to Suzanne, the introverted thinker, about the NE-SI pair and the NI-SE pair, and it seems to be the case that regardless of what position the functions are in, right, you kind of have to start with the sensing function, which feeds the intuitive function, because the intuitive functions need something real to branch off of, right? You have to kind of base your thoughts and understandings of what is possible or what might be or what the truth is or what's hidden behind reality or however you want to describe it, right? You have to base that off of actual real world physical experiences and sensations that you've had, right? And so an NE user is going to start from an SI data point and then branch off from it, right? It's always, right, branching outward, searching for more, right? You're going in a bunch of different directions all at once, and you don't really know which of those ways is the way that you should be going. So you try to use your introverted judging function, right, to parse through all of these NE possibilities, right? Your FI or your TI is what you're going to try to use to help you determine, right, which of those things are worth following or which of them is actually true based on what you've experienced before, and a whole host of other factors, right? People with NI and SE, they're using their extroverted sensing to sort of vacuum up massive amounts of raw sensory data from the world around them, and then they're kind of like mixing all these experiences together in like a giant, witch's brew that like ferments and then, drip feeds down to this distilled singular understanding that their subconscious has sort of reached after sitting on all these experiences for a while. You kind of see NI users are the ones who often have to like sleep on things in order to come to a conclusion on them, because NI often seems like a very like passive process. It seems to take time to work compared to any, and it doesn't mean that it's any worse, but it's sort of the kind of thing that it just comes to them, they'll be delivered with a nice little juicy NI insight, and over time the process becomes quicker. They're able to use their other functions in order to come to quick decisions on the moment based on NI conclusions that they've already reached and stored, or based on other factors. And they're often gonna want to come up with some kind of like system or heuristic based on their FE or their TE that follows, that allows them to navigate things without having to rely on kind of the slow process of NI. And NI is not always slow, but the thing is that extroverted intuition is instantaneous. It's in the present, right? It's a spontaneous, real-time function. And I often hear people talking about how, SI is rooted in the past and NI is rooted in the future. It's true that both SE and NE are rooted in the present. However, I think SI and NI both have a general time basis to them, meaning that an SI person is not necessarily going to be focused on the past, right? They're just going to be using their past experiences to inform their predictions about what will happen in the future, right? Whereas an NI user is not necessarily going to do that, right? They're going to base their predictions on what they know to be true from their NI, which doesn't always come to its conclusions based on their own personal experiences, right? Obviously, they have to have their own experiences in order to feed their NI, but the conclusions they reach are often much more, like I said, globalized and holistic. They tend to draw from things other than their experiences. And they're not going to be as likely as like an NESI user to assume that because something happened once or something happened in the past that it's going to happen again, because they have a much more, bird's eye view of things, I suppose you could say. They don't have to do as much chewing through things, parsing through things as an NE user does. And so even though an INTP like me will often seem to have a very holistic understanding of things, it's only because we've spent the time to, use our TI to just chew and chew and chew and chew through all of these little SINE data points that we're generating to finally come to some kind of conclusion about them that usually is pretty tentative anyway, because we know there's always other possibilities. And in that way, we tend to have that pitfall where we ignore the NI of things, right? We get lost in this swamp of any possibilities, and we don't know what to do with them, right? We don't know which one's the best, which one's the most resonant, which one is the most beautiful, NI has a certain aesthetic appreciation to it. It recognizes beauty, not just in a visual sense, but in a cosmic sense. And it comes to even its, cognitive intellectual conclusions can have kind of a nice aesthetic quality to them. You know, they're just kind of like little packages that are wrapped up neatly with a bow, and they speak to people. And so a kind of a good example of this behavior is how, like, Eric, being an NE user, right, he has tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of songs that he makes, constantly making songs. Many of them aren't finished. He may return to them, he may not. A lot of his music is just kind of wacky. Like, he likes to have interesting topics for his songs. He likes neat turns of phrase. You know, he's looking for like wacky, interesting new things. He's trying to make music that nobody else makes, right? An NI user, they're definitely capable of making cool, you know, interesting, you know, out of the box music, but when they make it, they're going to look for a certain holistic sense of beauty for it to have. And it's going to tend to be the kind of music that a lot of different people can enjoy, because it kind of speaks to kind of certain fundamental aesthetic truths of reality that nobody can really deny, that certain things are just, you know, objectively beautiful, or just kind of objectively sound good in a certain way. And on the topic of beauty, it seems like people with NI and SE tend to be much more visually based. They tend to have a lot of images and objects in their head. Often when I hear NI DOMs talk, especially INFJs, for some reason, they'll start like drawing pictures in the air with their hands, and they'll be like, you know, it's kind of like an orb moving through a circle, and then it turns inside out on itself, and there's a pyramid inside, and then out of the tip of the pyramid there's a beam of light, and, you know, and they'll start describing things like that because they have this very like kind of visualized, dreamlike interpretation of things a lot of the time. Whereas it seems like the people with a lot of NE and some SI in there, they tend to be more like auditory focused. We tend to be a little bit more verbal. We're a lot about speaking and using words and making rhymes and making jokes. We tend to be more into, you know, music than visual arts. And that's not to say that NI DOMs don't make fantastic musicians, because they do. But I do notice a bit more of like an auditory focus with NE and a bit more of a visual focus with NI and SE. Just for the record, I'm not sure how much that bears out in reality, but something to take note of. Let's see here. NI users, well, you won't often see them wearing a shirt like this. They don't really try to wear clothes that are crazy, right? They actually tend to have pretty good aesthetic sensibilities because of their NI and, you know, their SE. Like my INFJ brother, he's always pretty well dressed. You know, he's kind of, for a while at least, he had this kind of a, well, I don't know what you'd call it, like a hipster, bohemian chic kind of thing. You know, he likes to go to thrift stores and, you know, find like really, really cool articles of clothing and try to mix and match them to make them look good. I don't know. They seem to just have this innate sense of style about them, often understated, unless, of course, you know, you're like an SE DOM, in which case it probably won't be that understated at all. Let's see here. NE versus NI. So, NI users will fall into the trap of ignoring NE in the sense that the truths that their NI delivers to them, it delivers it to them with this absolute feeling of certainty, I guess. And maybe not absolute, but, you know, it just feels like the truth to them. And it's hard for them to then go and start considering other possibilities. You know, number one, because they're not as good with NE. And number two, because that would just completely throw a wrench in how their brain works, right? You kind of, in order for them to function, they have to assume that their NI is right. And that's kind of why you need both things, because, you know, you can't be locked into this trap of thinking that what you know or what you think you know is always true without considering other possibilities and other perspectives. I think it can be hard for like INTJs, for example, to consider and lend credence to the perspectives of others, maybe relative to other types. Not that I'm trying to call you guys out, but I'm trying to be typologically consistent here. So, you know, you kind of need a healthy dose of both. You know, any people are kind of, you know, spraying and praying, you know. We're trying to throw a lot of stuff out there. We're trying to see what sticks and what doesn't, you know, and then our SI will record what sticks and what doesn't, and then we'll try to repeat what sticks. And, you know, over time, we have to keep, you know, parsing through new data that's always coming in and parsing and thinking and parsing. And it seems like NI users don't have to do so much laborious internal thinking. You know, they're sort of graced with certain awareness that doesn't really require much conscious thought and may not really be able to be properly articulated to people. They're not quite as good, right, at articulating their perceptions as the NE users are. And they rely heavily on their judging functions to kind of standardize their NI thoughts and basically make it intelligible to other people. Because otherwise, they're like, oh, well, something came to me in a dream and I know it to be true, so just listen to me, right? People need more evidence than that. And that's where your extroverted judging function comes in, to standardize it and make it palatable to other people. And then you need your introverted judging function oftentimes to properly articulate it in the way that you really want to, but probably never quite get there. I imagine an I is sort of like FI in the sense that the perceptions and the thoughts that it lends you are very hard to boil down into language, because it seems to work on a much more kind of primitive, kind of image-based level. And when I say primitive, I don't mean it's not anything bad. It's actually a good thing, because it means there's not a lot of extra clutter added on top of it to muddy things up. You know, it's kind of using at your core level your kind of imaginative and qualities and your ability to synthesize disparate ideas and experiences with your brain's basic hardware, kind of. So let's see here. Like I said, NI convergent. You're taking all this data and you're trying to funnel it down into a singular truth, right? And NE is divergent, right? You're starting with some information, some experience that you've had, and then you're spreading outward from it, right? Looking for new possibilities, right? NI just wants what is, right? NE wants what might be. Or NI, it's not so much what is. Well, it's not just what is. It's also like what will be. You know, there's like a certain finality to it, right? It's what is the truth? What is going to happen? What is the best option? And NE goes, well, what might happen, right? What could be? What might be interesting, right? Well, could this be the best? Could that be the best? I don't know how to decide, right? So we're kind of just spitballing. We're just brainstorming. And NI doesn't really have to do brainstorming. They just have to sleep on it. And so hopefully I got about 20 minutes on this video. I think I did pretty good so far. Let me know what you guys think. Peace out.